revenues actually received to date by the county, because of the lag time, we're only talking about revenues that Montgomery County has received now on income taxes that were paid in 2024 per the 2024 tax filings, correct?
Again, it's a mixture. I'll defer to our colleagues of finance in terms of the percentage of what is calendar year 2025 withholdings versus payments that happened in calendar year 2024 for those that filed late.
Okay, and then then let me ask you this too to go with that. So for the 2025 withholdings, that would include withholdings as part of payroll for individuals, and it also includes those who pay estimated taxes, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Right. The 2024 amounts that Mr. Smith is referring to is if you are a taxpayer and you request an extension to October for filing your tax return, you're supposed to pay your tax in April.
Right.
Right. Your best guess.
Anything still due, right?
Right. And we hope they do. But once you get through the process, there could be more. So the amounts that are being received from calendar year 2024 now are related to those who have filed for an extension, filed their actual returns in October, and we receive those monies in our distributions in November and in January. Part
Right.
of that is the ability to process all of the October filings in time to get it to us in November. We did have a very positive distribution in the end of November, which supported our overall income tax forecast.
Okay. Thank you for that. And I guess I'll end on a comment. And this is something, I find myself saying every year, and yet I haven't seen it happen. And particularly to Council President, I'm about to make you still president again. Go Chair, Councilmember Stewart and Councilmember Friedson, who also is newly evicted from the GO committee, but deeply passionate about this stuff, have pointed out there hasn't always been. We get told we're going to get a thing from the executive branch, or we go through the budget during all the committee hearings on the operating budget, and we get told, yes, we're working on that. We're going to look at duplication of programs, and we're going to assess what's working, what's not working, and stuff's a one-time expense, except it's been in there for 4 years, and I get really, really, really tired of seeing that, because, I have flagged those things every year that I have been on this body so far, and yet they keep coming back. And then I find out, the executive branch agencies were just told cut 3% across the board. That is not strategic. There has to be a better way to do this. And we've gotten ourselves in a position where we are now facing a much bigger fiscal emergency because of what's going on with the federal government. But in the 3 years leading up to it, we didn't take the time to do the hard work to make sure we were in the best possible shape. And now we're in a position where we have a tremendous needs because of those gaps in federal revenue, and yet do not want to dig a bigger hole, cannot dig a bigger hole. And so that's really disappointing. I hope I am pleasantly surprised when I see the capital budget in January and when I see the operating budget in March. And also knowing, particularly in our capital budget, how many facilities are in need desperately for years of when things were going better, but weren't taken care of in the best of ways. And that didn't help anyone. And now we are left to bear the consequences of all of it, all at one time. And so, I hate to be a downer about this, but those are realities that no one has effectively sat down and dealt with. And that's the stuff that keeps me up at night. So I look forward to collaborating with my colleagues on this. I am blessed that Mr. Howard sits next to me, so I get to ask him questions as much as I want to. But we have incredibly difficult work ahead of us, and I am firmly committed to that. But we all have to put on a little bit of a shade of glasses of realism as we move forward with the FY27 budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Wiljowondo.
Thank you, Madam President. I appreciate the update from our staff as always, and for the work with the administration. Just want to make a couple points. Obviously, every year we have to take the hand we're dealt, and this cruel and immoral administration is dealing us a really horrible hand. And, you know, whether it's the 6,000 plus federal workers who have lost their jobs already here in the county. Many of us stood out and watched some of the folks at HHS down the block here scan their ID and not be allowed into work a few months ago, to what's happening to our immigrant community. We're going to have to step up in that context, right? And it's an uncertain context because, as you said, things are changing each and every day. Well, one thing that I think it's important to give the context here is it's also unprecedented in its cruelty, but also in how the actions of this administration are transferring money from the lowest income to the highest income. The biggest transfer of wealth that has ever occurred was the one big ugly bill that transferred wealth from low-income Medicaid recipients, SNAP recipients, folks who are relying on Head Start, through the version to the wealthiest 1%, the people making more than $1 million. And we have to we have a lot of millionaires in Montgomery County. In 2017, the last time an assessment I saw was done, there was over 3,200 of them. And I'm glad they're doing well, but we have by far 1,000 more than any other place in the state. 5 of the richest cities in the state, the top 5 are all here in Montgomery County. So you have people who are sitting with the benefit of this horrible, cruel administration's actions through further capital gains, further reductions in income tax. They are getting the average millionaire $100,000 around that back in federal taxes. And who's that coming from? That's coming from the SNAP recipient, the Medicaid recipient, the student who needs Head Start. So while we're going to have to make difficult decisions as we do every year, we're also going to have to make the unprecedented decision of understanding that context at the same time. Now, are we going to be able to supplant what the federal government has taken away and given to the wealthiest among us? No, but we do have to prioritize and plug holes. And we're going to have to ask, I believe, our community members who have done well to do more to help us fill those holes. I'm just going to be very clear about my view. Now, the details, we still won't be able to cover everything, but I think it's a moral imperative that we do that. And we have to protect our residents. And I know my colleagues agree we have to protect our residents, but it's just an unprecedented upside down time. And I ask that the executive branch, when you come back and get the estimates on Friday and we know where we are as we go through this process, one of the things I want to know is I want some analysis on these federal tax benefits, how that's playing out. I think we need to take that into context. Is that something you can look into? I'm looking at Department of Finance.
We will look into it.
I appreciate it. Thank you, and thank you for your work. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Councilmember Evan Glass.
Thank you, Madam President. I appreciate the comments made previously by Councilmember Luedtke about ESTAT. I have long stated since I arrived at the council saying that ESTAT should actually be a county function. As it once was decades ago. We know our properties, we know the changes in our communities, and we know that one house directly next to another does not make them the same. There are a lot of nuances, and there has been a lot of reporting showing that ESTAT improperly assesses homes to the detriment of our middle and lower class neighbors, overcharging them, over-assessing them, and under-assessing other properties. Those are all facts. And I've shared my thoughts with lawmakers in Annapolis, and perhaps as we go through this process, that will be another legislative priority at the state level. Putting that aside, looking through the packet, I have two questions. One is for the executive team, and that is, what are the next benchmarks and data points you are all looking to that will help better inform us as to what the fiscal reality might be?
Well, as we stated with Councilmember Stewart, we're certainly looking at when the governor's budget is being produced and what things may be recommended as passed down to county governments to take care of. That was once a state responsibility. That is definitely one benchmark. Also noting that the superintendent of Montgomery County Public Schools will release his budget next Wednesday. So we are trying to cobble together all of the intel out in those spaces to figure out a plan of, okay, where do we go from here once we know, get a better picture of what the investments, the requested investments look like, based off of what our revenue pictures will look like in the future as well.
I appreciate you pairing that, right? So if I understand what you said correctly, the county executive is looking towards the governor's actions and the superintendent's actions to inform his actions.
Well, not necessarily to inform his actions, but they are all components of what he will have to consider as he's developing his budget.
More broadly, are there external data points? Are there other revenue estimates? Are there other external realities that you are also looking to as guideposts?
The other external reality, of course, is what's happening at the state level, at the federal level, whether or not programs will survive, whether they will be drastically reduced to the point that they are ineffective, and the county will have to try to fill in those gaps. But there are also, economic indicators that Department of Finance looks at, and of course our revenue pictures, whether it's income tax or personal property tax. It's all environmentally something that we need to have in our toolbox in order to do analysis on what would come next.
It was the environmental analyses I was waiting for. The real hard data that is not dependent on other elected officials or appointed officials' decision-making, right? Which ultimately, aside from the governor and what the state does, whatever they might pass down to us, at some point in some reality, we have to accept that, what comes downstream. The other aspects are discretionary. Each appointed and elected official can make their own determination as to how to move forward. So thank you for that. And the second question might be towards council staff, but I think it might dovetail with the executive team as well. In the packet and in the information, is there any discernment between the fiscal challenges that are external regarding income taxes, property valuations, and also the financial realities, as was just noted, by the federal government, right? Reductions in services, reductions in support for our nonprofit ecosystem within HHS, whatever agencies and departments there might be. Have we delineated that?
I'll get it started, but also welcome comments from our executive partners. So no, the fiscal plan does not make any assumptions based on that, in so much as we just have an updated revenue picture. And as I noted, the whatever is left over after we pay our fiscal policies and the non-agency use is what's available to use for discretionary funds, as you were talking about. And certainly if the county needs to step up and put more in for reductions from the federal side, that will be part of the discretionary pot that remains based on the revenue picture. And so it does not make any assumptions specifically for what you're asking for other than the aggregate of what's left over.
I'll end on this. I think as we move forward, we have to keep those two realities in mind, that there are services we currently provide. They are core functions to who we are as people and as county government, and clearly we want to be able to maintain them. And then there are also reductions at the federal level that we want to mitigate as much as possible, but there's near unanimity as I've engaged in conversations, not only here in the council, but out in the community, that we will do what we can do with regard to the changes at the federal level. And so I think recognizing they are related but separate in some respect on a fiscal ledger, we just need to be mindful of that. And as we engage in this conversation, I think marking or denoting those as such would be helpful. So thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. We have two more last questions, very brief comments. Councilmember Lorian Sales.
Okay, thank you for the grim projections. It's not surprising given the fiscal constraints at the state and what's happening at the federal level and the increased demand and the continued conversations about how we're going to do more with less resources. This question is for the county executive staff. If you can provide a bit more insight into how the decreased economic activity factors into the assumptions and models that you projected in your analysis for the upcoming years. Can you share what methodology you used to calculate the changes in revenue projections?
We have, we utilize basic economic assumptions from Moody's Analytics and S&P Global. They change their name on an annual basis, sorry. And we use that to inform our models. We have a separate model for income tax. Its main inputs include these economic assumptions on wage and salary, personal income, resident employment, among others. And we utilize that model, which then takes into account some of what we were talking about a few moments ago with Councilmember Lutke, which is when we actually receive money associated with those income tax payments. They tend to spread out over approximately 3 years, some of which are withholding, and some of which are delayed tax payments that we were talking about. So our model takes into account the assumptions. It utilizes a 10-plus year history of those receipts and how they have been distributed to the county, and then we check it and we check it and we check it again against the facts. Similar concept for our property tax. I mean, these are our two largest revenue streams, and so the most extensive modeling having to do with our combination of our history of assessments, both on a monthly basis and an annual basis, as well as expectations that come from assumptions we receive on interest rates, home sales, home values, et cetera, that are part of the assumptions we receive from our external partners. We also look at, as Director Bryant said, we look at the state's assumptions because we are such a substantial portion of the state. So the assumptions we receive from Moody's and S&P are what I'll call a derivative, not in a math sense, but just they're related to what the state is using because we are such a big input for income tax in particular into their overall revenues. So we look at their work and we communicate with the BRE folks to get some of their models. We don't use their assumptions, but we look at theirs and we compare and adjust where necessary.
Thank you. Are there any cost-saving measures or program adjustments being considered to address anticipated overspending?
Yes and no. I will say yes and no because we do our typical quarter analysis for department spending, and we have gone through the first quarter analysis as of to date, and we'll be doing the second quarter, which gives us a more clear picture of how spending is progressing. Where departments are instructed, if you think you're going to overspend and or you have emergencies and other things to address community-wise, to work with OMB so that we can make sure that you're in a good place and that you can still deliver the services that you need to deliver, and that we can watch the investments that they're making and to try to peel back some of that overspending. With that said, there are some conditions that just are not manageable in that regard, like overtime for police because they don't have a full staffed complement, overtime for fire and rescue in the corrections department, and facility emergencies with DGS. So there are a number of things that occur in any budget year where departments could overspend. There are some expenditures that we know are typical, like the overtime, and we try to make some room or some projected
Assumptions
room
or-
for those expenditures, but it can be difficult.
Raises,
Yes,
okay,
compensation.
Yes.
And we are in bargaining with two of our union partners this year, so that will be reflected in the county executive's budget as well. So just trying to make sure that in the universe of investments that we know that we are making room in the macro for those things and accounting for them, and then trying to solve what would be a math problem from that perspective.
and my last question, as we are looking at these decreases in our reserves, are there any discussions? I know that we have a new executive director with our Economic Development Corporation. Are we exploring any new revenue streams or exploring adjusted tax rates to mitigate any shortfalls?
I know the county executive has been out in the public and speaking about taxes and tax revenue, and I think he has some ideas. They have not come fully to fruition as of yet, but I would look for some of those ideas either on the capital side and or the operating side as those budgets are presented to the council.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Katz, you have the last word.
And I will be as quick as I can possibly be. First off, thank you for the realistic updates. To Councilmember Lukey's point, on the appeals assessment, could you break that down, please, between residential and commercial? Because commercial, if they don't have a tenant, and then they're assessed at that point, they can appeal it, and then if they get a tenant, they forget to let us know about it, so therefore they're not reassessed. So if there's something we could find out about that, please. And Mr. Smith, please remind me, you were the one who came up with this number, I believe. This wasn't there a very low number of taxpayers who pay an extremely high, and income tax, pay an extremely high number percentage-wise of the taxes in Montgomery County?
Sure. Thank you, Councilmember Katz. I think what you're referring to, and I'm not sure I came up with the number, just in all fairness
No, I'm
to
not gonna-
whoever needs that attribution.
If it's a
but
good
there
idea,
is
Dean, I'll let you say you did
It's
it.
not the same, but the number that we have heard for a while, and I don't know if this has changed, I think it's worth looking at with finances, there's about 50 households
Yes.
each year, and those households could change each year that have a outsized effect on our income taxes, primarily due to the items that Ms. Feldman talked about earlier. When they're paying capital gains, they're doing their payments later, and they're reconciling the taxes that they're owed. Maybe they sold a business, maybe they sold a lot of stocks. Those things we cannot predict. And then, again, I think what you're referring to is that about 50 households. But again, it's not the same 50 households. I just want to
Understand.
note that.
And do you remember the percentage of what
Oh,
they?
no, unfortunately, I do not.
if you could, does somebody else know, or if you could come up to let us know, my concern is, because it is such a small number of households, and if any of that number of those households decide that they're going to say that they're no longer residents, they might still have a house in Montgomery County, but they declare their residence someplace else, that we would lose all of their income. And that, to me, is a real concern. So thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you so much to everyone. And for staff, we look forward to having an exciting year. Very painful year. But thank you for the partnership. Colleagues, I'm looking at the time. Please be mindful of the time of your remarks. I'm going to move forward with the introduction of bills. So we have one today, a very special one. And it's Expedited Bill 3525, the Trust Act. I'm going to say it very simply. It's not just led by me. This is such an important piece of legislation that is about welcoming the immigrant community, but also embracing public safety for every single person who lives in this county. It has been not just co-sponsored, but co-led by every single council member sitting here. I'm going to pass the mic to our attorney to see if you want to add anything else about this, and then we're going to quickly just move along the agenda. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. There's nothing that I need to add, but happy to elaborate or answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no comments and questions, thank you so much for that. And thank you for the community for being here today and for pushing this. We're going to continue embracing our values in Montgomery County. Look forward to the public hearing on January 13th. With that, we're going to move forward, my friends. The next item on the agenda is called on bills. Next to the council's consideration are two bills for the final reading. The first one is Expedited Bill 3125, Landlord-Tenant Relations, Landlord Notice Requirements, Evictions. The Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee recommends enactment with amendments. I'm going to pass the mic to the chair of the PHP Committee, Chairman Fritzen.
Thank you. I will try to be brief here. This was Expedited Bill 3125, Landlord-Tenant Relations. It was sponsored by lead sponsor Councilmember Mink. There was a public hearing on October 28th. The bill requires landlords to notify tenants in the county of scheduled evictions, establish penalties for noncompliance, and notify the department of upcoming evictions. We had a discussion about the notification. There was an initial interest in requiring the sheriff's office to notify Department of Housing and Community Affairs. Unfortunately, we're not legally able to do that. And the department had clarified that all they were looking for was to essentially be copied on the notification. So to try to mitigate the administrative burden. There are some concerns about whether or not they are going to be copied and how that is going to work. But ultimately, there was an amendment that did not go through, just for colleagues' understanding and consideration after we had quite a bit of discussion on that item. That committee session was on December 1st. The PHP committee voted 3-0 to recommend enactment of the bill with a few amendments, clarify the bill's requirements, would apply to evictions occurring on or after 14 days after the bill's expedited effective date, clarify that a landlord must provide to DHCA a copy of the required notice at least 14 days in advance of scheduled evictions, require DHCA to maintain a website with resources for individuals facing eviction, require the landlord to provide the tenant with a link to the website, clarify that the landlord must provide to DHCA a copy of the same. We just clarified that, and ensure that it's the complete written notice that it provided to the tenant pursuant to state law, and then require DHCA to share notices of eviction with Department of Health and Human Services. With that, we have a 3-0 committee recommendation, and I will yield back to you and staff as needed.
Does staff have any comments?
No, thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilmember Kristen Mink, the lead sponsor of this bill.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you to the bill's co-sponsors, to Sheriff Max Wee, who wrote a very compelling letter of support, to the community members who advocated first for the state bill that made this possible, and now for passage of this bill. And I'll note that includes residents who have faced eviction themselves, and those who have supported others who have been evicted, and those who are in both categories. Thank you to the executive branch for their thoughtful engagement, to the PHP committee for their unanimous recommendation as amended. Thank you, Ms. Wellens, for all of your navigation. And thank you to my staff, especially Anna and Chris, for all their work. And I'll note that in my office, we have many constituent cases in which we're trying to prevent evictions and helping to pick up the pieces when it does happen. So being able to make these systemic improvements is very meaningful. And I will close by quoting a community member who spoke at our public hearing, Harold Hill, who noted that every eviction I have been through has been tied to a job loss, and the job losses are happening now. So with that, I look forward to getting this done now. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Mink. And as she mentioned, thank you to the state for allowing us to do this. With that, my friends, we have a recommendation from the Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee. This is a roll call vote. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Lukey?
Yes.
Councilmember Lukey votes yes. Councilmember Mink?
Yes.
Councilmember Mink votes yes. Councilmember Sales?
Yes.
Councilmember Sales votes yes. Councilmember Stewart?
Yes.
Councilmember Stewart votes yes. Councilmember Glass?
Yes.
Councilmember Glass votes yes. Councilmember Katz?
Yes.
Councilmember Katz votes yes. Councilmember Friedson?
Yes.
Councilmember Friedson votes yes. Councilmember Drawando?
Yes.
Councilmember Drawando votes yes. Councilmember Falcom?
Yes.
Councilmember Falcom votes yes. Councilmember Fawning Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilmember Fawning Gonzalez votes yes.
Thank you so much. That was unanimous. Thank you for all the advocacy also involved in this bill. We're going to move on to the second bill for the final reading today. This is the HERO Act. And so you know, when I heard during the public hearing that folks wanted to have this bill passed in December, I told the clerk, this bill must be here on the last day of session. And it happened thanks to the GO Committee's work as well. So with that, I'm going to pass the mic to the chair of the GO Committee, Chairwoman Stewart.
Thank you. Thank you, Council President Fanny Gonzalez, for making sure we get this on the agenda today. The GO Committee met on December 4th and unanimously recommends with amendments expedited Bill 32-25, Employees Retirement System Survivor Benefits Death During the Line of Duty, also known as the HERO Act. This bill would increase death benefits to spouses of Group G members whose deaths are service-connected and generally amend the law regarding the employee's retirement system, including pension benefits and other benefits available to survivors upon service-connected deaths. The purpose of the bill is to maintain existing survivor benefit options for spouses and children of career fighters. Those are Group G members who are killed in the line of duty, while adding an option for the spouse to receive a pension as if the member had at least 20 years of credited service. The HERO Act would also ensure that benefits are received expeditiously following a line of duty death and reaffirm the county's commitment to honoring the critical work of the county's first responders and public safety officials. I want to thank the lead sponsors, Councilmember Glass and Katz, and I believe there is, Madam President, another amendment for the body that Councilmember Lukey, Katz, and Glass had previewed at our committee session, but it wasn't ready yet for the committee to take up. And so with that, I'll turn it back to you.
Does the council staff want to go over that amendment first?
With your permission, Madam President, I would defer to the bill sponsors. If they would like me to walk through it, I'm happy to do that, obviously.
Councilmember Evan Glass, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. I do want to thank you and the GO Committee Chair for expeditiously moving this legislation forward, because this bill is all about timing. On January 11th, Master Firefighter Christopher Higgins made the ultimate sacrifice as he was responding to a fire, and he died in the line of duty. And while his family mourned this devastating and sudden loss, they were also left without their primary source of income. And after 23 years of dedicated service, Master Firefighter Higgins earned the security of knowing that his wife and children would be protected. His pension should have reached them without hesitation or delay. But Master Firefighter Higgins' widow, Lisa, went 6 months without any income or financial support. 6 months. And the HERO Act will ensure that the families of our fallen are immediately taken care of. This legislation strengthens our public safety, it fixes critical gaps, and it honors those who serve our community. We know that no legislation can undo the pain of the fallen firefighters and their families, what they go through, but the HERO Act will make it easier. God forbid a heroic first responder is killed in the line of duty. I want to note that this is the first step in fixing this system across the board. A number of us, particularly Councilmember Lutke and Councilmember Katz, will be offering an amendment to extend these same benefits to our police officers. And we have already begun drafting legislation to ensure the county's line of duty benefits are updated to also include our sheriff's deputies and our correctional officers. I want to thank my colleague, Councilmember Katz, for his partnership in this legislation. I also want to thank Valeria Carranza and Hannah Wilkov on my team for their work. And finally, I want to acknowledge the compassionate guidance and support from Fire Chief Corey Smedley and his leadership team, from IAFF Local 1664, from Captain Scott Kittner and Lieutenant Michael Moore, and most importantly, from Lisa Higgins. I hope this legislation never has to be used, but if tragedy does occur, I know that I'm comforted in knowing that the families of our fallen firefighters will be taken care of. Thank you, Madam President.
So we have an amendment by Councilmember Glass. Can I hear a second?
I'll defer to Councilmember Luke.
Oops, sorry, pushing the wrong buttons. You want me to speak to my amendment, right? Certainly recognizing and thankful for Councilmember Glass's leadership on the original bill, and not wanting to do anything that was going to delay this, right? As you heard, the Higgins family had to wait 6 months, and no one should have to bear that kind of administrative mess in the middle of a family tragedy that occurred while serving Montgomery County. But mercifully, we were able to at least accomplish working through the back end of things with MCPD and FOP Lodge 35. And I want to thank Lee Holland, who is here, was here, might not be here in the moment, and for our executive leadership team at MCPD and our Office of Labor Relations. Because here's the thing, we don't want to legislate things that are collectively bargained for typically, but we do want to memorialize them in legislation if we are in fact all on the same sheet of music, which we are, and that is the basis for putting forth the amendment that everyone received related to MCPD. So we add them in their appropriate group and their appropriate number of service years. And to clarify, the service years that are there are different than what is present for MCFRS because they are in fact collectively bargained that way. So that being said, the only amendment before us today is with respect to MCPD and line of duty deaths affecting their pension benefits. And we will circle back at a later date. Again, I am working closely with our partners at McGeo and the Sheriff's Office and Department of Corrections to make sure we're encompassing all potential line of duty deaths that fall within the county pension system. Thank you.
So the amendment, so everybody knows, is on the addendum on the agenda, so everybody can hear it. So we have a motion from Councilmember Don Lukey and a second by Councilmember Katz. I have Councilmember Will Jawando, who has a comment on this.
Thank you. I want to thank the sponsors of the bill and also Councilmember Lukey for this amendment. I will be supporting it. And I want to also just flag that when we're looking at the future, other like sheriff and others, I think we need to also be looking into all line of service deaths to make sure that this is updated. You know, we lost Mr. Bell in May, who was heroic, pulled the bus over, as he was having a heart attack, prevented loss of life, and then unfortunately passed away. One of our MCDOT ride-on bus operators. We need to pass this today. We need to get it done. I'm so glad we're getting it done quickly. But as we're looking at coming back, I'd love to work with colleagues to make sure that this is happening across the board, because anyone right now who's dedicated their lives to public service and dies in the line of doing that service should have no issue getting their pension or any money that they're required to get. So I appreciate the sponsors and look forward to supporting this amendment.
Seeing no more other questions, and we have a motion by Councilmember Don Lukey, second by Katz. All in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, amendment approved. Is there anybody else who has a question on this bill? Seeing none now, thank you, Councilmember Mink. This is a roll call to approve expedited bill 3125.
We need a motion
Is
to
amended.
approve as amended, which I gladly make.
Favor? It's a roll call.
That's what I said before.
Councilmember Lukey?
Yes.
Councilmember Lukey votes yes. Councilmember Mink?
Yes.
Councilmember Mink votes yes. Councilmember Sales?
Yes.
Councilmember Sales votes yes. Councilmember Stewart?
Yep.
Councilmember Stewart votes yes. Councilmember Glass?
Yes.
Councilmember Glass votes yes. Councilmember Katz?
Yes.
Councilmember Katz votes yes. Councilmember Friedson?
Yes.
Councilmember Friedson votes yes. Councilmember Jawando?
Yes.
Councilmember Jawando votes yes. Councilmember Falcom?
Yes.
Councilmember Falcom votes yes. Councilmember Funding Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilmember Funding Gonzalez votes yes.
Thank you so much. This was unanimous. Thank you again for the sponsors. Final item on the agenda. And I see your former colleague right in the corner. So I need, this is an action item on the resolution to confirm or reject the county executive's nominee for Director of the Department of Recreation, Mr. Gabriel Albornoz. I will entertain a motion to confirm the appointment of Gabe Albornoz as the new Recreation Department Director. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
It's moved by Council Vice President Marilyn Balcom, second by Council Member Sales. Those in favor, please raise your hand. It was unanimous, Gabe. Motion approved. The council will be in recess until January 12th, but rest assured that we will continue to work in support of the residents of Montgomery County. Please do not hesitate to contact our offices for assistance. Happy holidays to all. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
And who's gonna be a council member when they grow up? 1, 2, 3. Oh, I love it. We're gonna have all you taking our jobs in a few years.
Talk to me about why we're here in a laundromat in the Long Branch neighborhood of Montgomery County.
We're here to get the word out today about Medicaid. Where 20 million Americans across the U.S. have been now disenrolled from Medicaid for administrative paperwork reasons. This is one of the zip codes in the state that has one of the highest rates of procedural disenrollment. Thinking about how do we actually get through the paperwork, get the word out about not only how do you recertify the benefit, but then after that, how do we actually understand the benefit and use it?
Can I hold the door? You got that? We find that laundromats are about 70% female, and about 2/3 of people are living in multi-generational housing, and so it's really, really valuable time with the busiest families. Often in Black and Latina neighborhoods across Maryland, to make sure that people have the information about keeping their Medicaid insurance, making sure you have SNAP. And we can go through the SNAP application together. That they understand how to use the processes, and more importantly, that we help people all the way through the process. It's what Fabric Health does.
The work is actually happening the way that Joanne is doing it, right through the rows of the laundry, introducing himself, getting to know families, getting the thing done right as you're waiting there.
I'm very surprised that we're able to call on the spot to the state and make sure that they're renewing their Medicaid to make sure they're not losing their benefits. And some people don't even know that they have to renew every year. Right now, I am loading up her card with $10. There we go. Families who they don't realize they need health insurance up until an emergency happens, and now they have to they're scrambling trying to figure out how to get it done because they can't afford to go to the hospital. So it's very important to help them out with that service.
But I think the most impactful way of communicating with them is meeting them where they are, and that is literally here at the laundromat. What is the receptivity? What are people saying to you when you interact with them?
It's been fantastic, right? Because the number one response we get, of course, is thank you for saving me another extra trip that I would have needed to take, or another phone call I would have needed to make, and allow me to do it all while I'm waiting here anyways.
Do you go to the doctor, and are you healthy? You're both healthy? Well, we are here to make sure that you get health care and make sure that you're healthy and strong and your bones are good, okay? Good. Can I get a high five? Awesome. Thank you, Logan. Thank you.
I would really like to also emphasize what our mission is. It's to make clean energy and climate resilient solutions more accessible and more affordable to all businesses and residents in the county.
Here at the Tacoma Overlook property, just to provide the first example, you have some really interesting uses of technology, starting with the boilers, which were recently replaced. They actually replaced many of their boiler systems with something called a combined heat and power plant. So not only are they using their natural gas today just to make heat for the site, but they're also using natural gas to make power